Welcome to my channel, Craft Dynamics. Today, we're going to be modifying these three tombstones. I picked them up at Spirit Halloween. Currently, they're having a sale buy one, get one half off. The two on the left, I believe, are 2024 models, but I think we can make them better. Let's do this. Alright guys, for this clip right here, we're going to open up the box and we're going to take it out. It's just going to get in the way anyways. Grab yourself a heat gun and we're gonna heat up this plastic. It's too raised right around the nose area, so it would be above the line where the epoxy is gonna go, because we're gonna get rid of this bat nose. It's just doesn't fit the theme. Who wants a big bat coming out of their tombstone? I prefer just the skull to be coming out of it. So what we're doing is heating up the plastic right here and pushing down on it. Be careful not to overheat. If you overheat, you might melt your plastic too much and it might dip way too low. Anyways, just keep at it till you feel you have a pretty good divot where enough epoxy is gonna take to it. Alright, so in this next portion we're gonna do the upper part. Here you want to be a little bit more careful. There's not much room to work with. And you want to lightly press and take your time. That way you don't warp the plastic too much. Just take your time little by little until the plastic starts to give way, and then just press down. Oh, by the way, watch the fingers. It gets a little toasty. Ask me how I know. Alright, now that you have the plastic in its place, you're going to want to sand it down so that the epoxy has something to adhere to. Just take your time and make sure you get all the spots on the bottom and on the top. Just as long as you rough it out a little bit, it should take. Time for a little isopropyl alcohol. This will help clean up the areas that have been sanded, and it'll help the epoxy better adhere to those areas as well. I picked up this Famo with glaze coat up here locally at a Home Depot. The unicorn spit is from another project. I'm gonna go ahead and mix a little bit of white and a little bit of black to give me that grayish color, trying to match what's already on the tombstone. We'll see how close we get it in the final results. Okay, so this glaze color right here is a 1-to-1. However many ounces or amount of part A that you mix, you have to mix equal parts B. So 1-to-1. Right here I'm mixing the white, and you want to mix quite a bit of white as opposed to the black. The black you want to be more careful with, because if you mix too much black, you're gonna over darken it and it's just gonna look wrong. You want to go little by little of the black. Right here I'm thinking that I have it pretty much where I need it, so I don't think I'm going to add any more black. But I forgot to do a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of isopropyl alcohol before the pour. Now pouring. And don't over pour, because then it's gonna start overfilling areas you don't want it to fill. So admittedly, this is my fault right here. I forgot to film whenever I was dremeling out the letters and the new design to it. I thought I had filmed it, but it got lost somewhere, or just never actually got to filming that portion of the build. But anyways, here's what it looks like with the new cracks in the tombstone and the new lettering dremeled out. And you're gonna have to dremel it out because the epoxy is going to cover up those letterings and you're going to have to re-dremel them out. And right here I'm just sanding away. Okay, so not typical for tombstones that have color or brass or gold adornments, but hey, it's my tombstone and I want it to stand out a little bit. So I'm going to color this star right here kind of in a copper tonish color, and I think I achieved this with crimson, a little bit of gold, and white. Okay, so here I'm painting in the letters. Wanted to make it more legible. That way kids, adults, anybody could read them. I know, again, not typical of tombstones, but what's typical in Halloween anyways? If you have a project like this, make it your own and paint it the way you want to. We're at the home stretch. Now all we have to do is paint those cracks in with the gray similar to the tombstone. Take your time and don't go over the lines, because then cleanup's just going to be a lot more difficult. And as you can see here, I do go out of the lines a little bit, but I wipe it away with my fingers. I mean, it's easier to come off the fingers than it is the tombstone when it dries, right? Here we're going to give it one final sanding to the glossy epoxy areas. Shortly after, we're going to give it a satin poly finish. Moving on to the next tombstone before the big reveal, we're going to take measurements and get the proper dimensions to get a 1/4 inch plywood cutout to make a new phrase for this tombstone. Write down the measurements, otherwise you're going to forget. Now that you have your 1/4 inch plywood, mark those lines, get yourself a ruler, and make yourself some straight lines to get that cut out for your new phrase. So we have a problem with the new cutout. It won't fit in the corners. We're going to mark it, and then we're going to take it to the scroll saw to cut these out. Alright, here we are at the scroll saw cutting these out. Make sure you watch those fingers. If you're not confident with the scroll saw, get an adult to do it for you. Now that we have our cutouts for our new phrases, let's get some fonts. Quick Google search will find you plenty of sites that have these fonts. Here I'm just looking through to see what fits my tombstones, and it looks like they have plenty to choose from, quite a bit of pages. Here I like this Creepster, so I'm going to download that. I'm going to keep looking around to see what else I like. Download the ones you want, and whatever fits your tombstone. Now that you have those fonts selected, we're going to download them to Word document. Select the font that you downloaded, click on it, and there's an install to the top left. Hit that and it should go to your Word document. Do any of the other ones you have and repeat the process. Here in Word document, we're going to test out our new fonts, and you could do the same. Make them as big as you want, print them out, test them out on your 1/4 inch plywood. Whatever fits best is what you want to go with. This is one of the fonts that I picked out. It's called Ghoulish. I'm cutting it out and getting it ready for the scroll saw. To eliminate the big mess that comes with gluing down paper onto wood, here's a nice little trick I like to use. Get yourself some contact paper, take that, cut it to size, take the back sticky portion of it off, stick it onto the wood, and then spray your adhesive on top of that. Spray your adhesive and give it like 30 seconds before you place your font on top of that. Each one of these is going to have to be individually drilled so that I can fit the scroll saw blade through it. Okay, so here's what the first scroll saw lettering cutout looked like. Take your time, and if you're out of practice, maybe practice with some other fonts and letters. And voila, such a clean peel off, no residue, nothing to sand off, except if you're gonna stain. Here I'm taking some 80 grit and sanding the area where the epoxy is gonna go so that it could have a better surface area to grip to. Once again, some isopropyl alcohol to clean the area where your epoxy is going to be dropped into. Here we have the new phrase panel, and we're going to do a light sanding on the back side so that it has a better grip to the epoxy. As you can see, my cup's already full with the epoxy. Just gotta mix it a little bit more. Make sure that it's good to go. Pour it in. Let it spread out. And drop in your new phrase. Here I ran into a little bit of an issue where the center pieces of the letters were not staying in one spot. They were trying to float or move consistently, so I had to come up with the system and use popsicle sticks to give a base so that I could super glue on the upper portion of it so that it wouldn't move as much. You're going to have to keep an eye on this epoxy because it's going to create air bubbles. Get yourself a little heat gun and get those air bubbles out. Also, these little center pieces for these lettering and numbers, they try to move a lot, so until the epoxy hardens enough, you're going to have to keep an eye on them. Now that it's hardened, we're going to sand it down because we're going to give it some staining, kind of to match the gray that's already on this Tombstone. Here it is already stained. Apparently I just forgot to film the process of staining it, but here I am cleaning out the letterings. Some of that stain got in there, and some ear swabs cleans this up pretty nicely. Since this Tombstone is going to be going outside, I decided to do a thin layer of epoxy on top. Here I am spreading it out with the cut in half popsicle stick. I should have left the whole stick as it's pretty thin and I got some on my finger. Then after this, you're going to want to get those air bubbles out and get yourself a small little heat gun like the one I have here and get those air bubbles out. Okay, I did a little sanding and a little cleaning here, and now it's ready for paint. I'm going to go with some white, some copper tones. Going to paint the bones as well. Here I'm just slightly feathering in the paint, making sure not to oversaturate or go in too deep into areas that I don't want to go into. Well, here we have the whole skull and wings painted. Now we're getting into the bones. Here I'm not going to put too much paint onto these areas. I just want a light coat into these areas. Sorry to do this to you guys, but you're just going to have to wait till the end to see that other Tombstone. Here we have a different issue. We have these letters that we have to cut out. These are foam, so this isn't too hard. Moving on to the next one, we have to cut out 34 inches from the bottom. Take your time, get a sharp razor knife, and it shouldn't be too difficult. Just take your time and don't rush things, otherwise you're going to cut out a big chunk that you didn't intend to. Here are those Tombstones where Lazarius cut out. Now they're ready to be transformed. I'll be using dry lock masonry paint and Quikrete concrete stain, the black version, to paint the Tombstones that are in foam. This is how you'll get your gray. Here we have your first coat of paint on the foam Tombstone, and then we have the second coat right here. Here we're going to use 1 drop of acrylic yellow. We're going to paint the candles in this color. Later on I change my mind and I go back to the gold color with a little bit of whitish yellow. Next we'll paint the insignia on top in a gold acrylic color. We'll mix that in with a little bit of that masonry paint. Now let's age the Tombstone. Grab some latex paint and some water and water it down. Grab your rag and let that latex paint run down the tombstone. It'll give it an old, worn out look. We're at the final stages of this tombstone right here, and all we're doing now is highlighting the areas that need highlighting. Here I'm just highlighting some of the areas that are missing some of that gold. Just working my way through these candles and getting them ready for the final stage. Here's the last and final tombstone. This is the bonus tombstone that I was talking about. And we're gonna do a little bit of repairs on it. As you can see, it's taken some damage over the years. For this repair, you're gonna wanna use some of that latex masonry paint, and you're gonna add a little bit of black with that quick create pigment. For the areas that have exposed foam, you're gonna wanna use a little bit of sand in there. That way it gives it a more of a consistency of kind of like concrete. Just like I'll show you here in this area right here. I threw a little bit of sand in there, mixed it, and you just stuff it in there. Once it's dry, it'll dry hard as a rock. Here's those scroll cutouts for these other foam tombstones. Just peeling them off right now and getting them ready to stain. Here we're staining the wood plates with the Slate 284. You can pick this up at any local hardware store. I didn't think these were dark enough, so I grabbed some of that black unicorn spit and I started rubbing it into the wood stain, and it actually took quite nicely. Got them a little bit darker, and I think they came out great. Here I'm applying a layer of protection. This is Varathane polyurethane in a satin finish. Later on I found out that this was kind of useless because of the last step that I'm going to take to protect these. Here they are with that unnecessary step. I should have just realized that I wasn't going to need to protect these due to the last step.
Well, there it is. The two plastic tombstones are pretty much ready to go. If you've been following along, you know how much work we've put into it. The scroll sawing was pretty intensive. Don't think I would be doing that again. I'd probably try another method, but it is what it is. We got these knocked out.
That's it for this one, guys. The two foam ones in the next video are going to get backlit LED strips, and I'll pretty much explain why I didn't need to do that polyurethane satin finish on them. I think these look great. Unfortunately, I didn't record the final stages of that right tombstone with the bell, but they're pretty much done in this episode. If you could do me one favor, please hit that like button down below. If you want to see more, hit that subscribe button.